Western University says no to encampment demands. Police who murdered an Indigenous man say they needed more mental health supports. Robert G. Miller has been charged with the sexual assault of 8 girls and 2 women. The EU is putting tariffs on Russian agriculture exports to try and stop them from entering Europe. And the US and Argentina are doing war games. Good morning. It's Friday, May 31st. I'm Nora. Here are your headlines. First to London, where Western University's president Alan Shepard wrote an open letter to the Western community that said he isn't sure that the university could actually meet the first demand of a Gaza Solidarity encampment. Also, I was once on a hiring committee that hired Alan Shepard. It's funny to me that he ended up at Western, though not at all surprising. Jacqueline LaBelle from Global News reports that the institution's investments are already public, but not to the level of detail that protesters want, because the funds are, quote, pooled funds curated by external fund managers, unquote. Curated is a highly funny word for LaBelle to have chosen there. Shepard, in what I imagine he thinks is a slam dunk argument, says that these funds would need to be dismantled to suss out a very small number of investments that might relate to Israel. Plus, he rejects the call to boycott Israeli academic institutions because academics shouldn't be punished for the actions of their government. The encampment at Western has been going on now for 3 weeks. Here's what Shepard is willing to agree to. He will meet with 3 or 4 student reps. He will, quote, continue its commitment to investment transparency, unquote, and develop an educational speaker series on Israel and Palestine. That is like, oh man, whoever came up with that was like, oh, I got the best idea. God, you guys suck. They will also develop a framework for international partnerships and give more money to the Global Students and Scholars at Risk program. That's a whole lot of nothing. At the very least, Shepard should be agreeing to meet with as many students who want to meet with him or hear from him. Put him in front of a town hall. Let him hear from people about why an academic boycott isn't about holding a professor accountable for the actions of their government, but instead places pressure on the professor to oppose the actions of their government. Anyway, what I take away from this is that Western has too much money in hedge funds. How much do they invest in real estate income trusts? And why do they even have these funds? Why on earth are these institutions investing in anything other than GICs and Canadian bonds? They can't answer the questions related to Israel because they will end up having to explain why in the hell they play the stock market with public and student funds in the first place. Next, a story at CTV News by Chelsea Papineau reports that cops who murdered a man in 2020 are angry that they were given no mental health supports after. They blame the SIU on that, saying that the SIU didn't want them speaking about the case while it was investigated, which doesn't exactly pass the smell test for me. Surely that kind of thing would be guided by the same confidentiality as speaking about anything with a medical professional while you're under investigation. The cops were, of course, cleared of any wrongdoing. Now, here's what happened. Back in April 2020, at the height of when things were scary related to COVID, John Paul J. George was shot in the torso 5 times by 2 cops, Constable Nicholas Kwong and Constable Robert Mackey. They were responding to a call that George had threatened to kill people, and he had a replica firearm. George was Indigenous. The cops said there was no time to de-escalate when they arrived. They had to shoot when George didn't drop his fake gun. After they shot him 5 times in the torso, they handcuffed him behind his back where he had fallen to the floor. Kwong said this amazing specimen of cop logic, quote, "When I saw him fall over to his stomach, I believed that the threat had been subdued enough to stop shooting. The threat is never 0, unquote. That is, of course, unless you've killed someone. I mean, God, imagine seeing that and then handcuffing them behind their back. Horrific. A third cop, Kaylee Bradley, then came in to do CPR. The cops said that they needed the chance to debrief with one another and were stopped from doing so, probably because normally you don't want suspects colluding before an investigation so you can get each side without the influence of the other side. Mackey and Bradley did find their own therapists, but Kwong didn't, saying that he needed help to do that. Chelsea also included this line. Maybe you understand what it means because I don't, but it seems like, I don't know, important. Quote, as a common practice, when firearms are discharged by police, officers exchange them with one another to keep continuity, Kwong Mackey and Bradley testified, unquote. I mean, what? They exchange firearms with one another after they've fired them at someone to maintain. What does continuity mean in this case? Anyway, CTV News, edit this stuff. Take it out of cop speak. Make it understandable for lay people. My God. Maybe the best mental health support here is not putting cops in a situation where they are going to murder someone in mental distress. I don't know. It seems like prevention here would do far much more than any treatment. Next to Quebec, where the Fifth Estate is reporting that Robert G. Miller has finally been arrested for sexual assault, obtaining sexual services for consideration, and sexual exploitation of minors. Miller, you might recall, is perhaps Canada's Jeffrey Epstein. The billionaire is alleged to have committed the crimes against 8 girls and 2 women between 1994 and 2016. He was arrested in Westmount in Montreal. Miller is 80, and he says that his advanced Parkinson's makes it impossible for him to defend himself. He had been the CEO of Future Electronics until the news broke about his sexual attacks in February 2023, when he resigned. Brigitte Noel reports that Miller is saying that the claims are all made up and the victims are just looking for money. The Fifth Estate and Radio-Canada's enquête found that Miller's victims said that they were given tons of money and gifts and were encouraged to recruit their friends to also become involved in his sex ring. Teresita Fuentes, his longtime assistant, was also charged with procuring, and other associates were charged too. At about the same time that Miller was allegedly attacking girls, Peter Nygard was also out there sexually assaulting women. Nygard was convicted in 2023 with 4 counts of sexual assault. Confoundingly, he has since decided to sue some of the victims for defamation. Now to international news, and first to the European Union. Al Jazeera is reporting that the EU will place quote-unquote prohibitive tariffs on grain, cereals, and beet pulp pellets that come from Russia and Belarus. The tariffs will be in place starting July 1st. The hope is that the tariffs stop Russian and Belarusian imports into the EU to stop the destabilization of the EU grain market. They also want to stop Russia from exporting grain they're taking from Ukraine. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, the EU has imported much more grains and agricultural products from Russia than before. They went from importing just under 120 million euros up to 440 million euros in 2023, though Al Jazeera doesn't explain why. The EU promises that this will not impact the global supply of these products because none of the products that are shipped outside of Europe would pass through Europe. And finally, Argentina is hosting the United States naval forces for a naval exercises right now. That will include the participation of the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS George Washington. It's the first kind of operation between the two countries since 2010. Leadership from both sides gushed to Reuters about how great the relationship between the United States and Argentina is right now, even though Argentina is now being led by the fascist Javier Milei. Mark Stanley, the U.S. ambassador to Argentina, noted that they had recently sold to Argentina F-16 fighter jets. Milei has been cozying up to U.S. officials and has promised to be more critical of China and Russia. It seems bad that as the global rules-based order is collapsing, it's going to be replaced by whatever this relationship is. I guess good luck to us all in the West. Those are your headlines for Friday, May 31st. Oh my God, it is not only Friday, it is also the last day of May. Make it count. Do something, I don't know, springy. Smell some lilacs or something today if you can. I have not only the biggest bit of work due tomorrow, but also a protest that I'm organizing. So wish me luck. I wish you luck. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And as always, I'll talk to you on the other side.